You're entering Corsi Nation.
This is actually Jerome Corsi today. It's Tuesday. It's June 24th, 2025. Thanks for joining us on CorsiNation.com. We're doing shows every weekday. You can find us on X at Corsi Jerome 1 and on Substack, JeromeCorsiPhD.substack.com. The big news today is, of course, the war between Israel and Iran. And the breaking news is that President Trump last night, of course, this huge strike, which was done on the Iranian underground facilities and nuclear facilities all through the country, including these B-2 bombers that dropped 6 bunker busters on the deeply entrenched within a mountain Fordo nuclear plant that was, I think, the cornerstone of Iran's nuclear program, where the centrifuges were, et cetera, where they were enriching uranium. It was a magnificent strike. I mean, it's game changing in its scope, and only President Trump could have pulled it off. This could never have been done by Clinton, Obama, Jimmy Carter. Any of the Democrats would never have been able to do this. This took a strong leader, and a strong leader who believed in America. The troops performed magnificently. We didn't lose a single person. All the bombs were dropped with precision. The wipeout into Iran's nuclear facilities was total. Of course, Iran is still in hiding, and it's still the Ayatollah is now deep in a bunker, doing his Hitler routines. Hunkering down when his country's completely lost the war. Last night, Trump said that there would be a ceasefire. Iran was actually asking for a ceasefire. Then at some point in the night, Iran fired a missile into Israel, and Israel launched a strike against Iran. Trump responded very strongly. He was upset about it. Well, Israel has now called those planes back, and they're going to do a wave over across Iran, but they're not going to drop any bombs. So Trump's pretty much in control of the situation. He's flying off to NATO, and I'm sure he's going to tell NATO that NATO countries need to start paying up, or we don't need NATO anymore. I think Trump is realizing that the way to end wars is to defund everyone. And in the Middle East, Iran has been the terror master. And so getting rid of these Iranian mullahs, well, not something we want to do through regime change. We don't want to put boots on the ground. We don't want to get into another prolonged Iraq or Afghanistan situation. But the people of Iran ought to rise up against these Ayatollahs and get rid of them. If they don't, there's other solutions. I think the Mossad has been calling up the Iraqi Revolutionary Guard leaders all night and telling them to leave the country or they'd be dead today. Iran's got agents operating all through Iran, and this has been going on. I've had a discussion with Uri Labrani, who is the minister in the Ministry of Defense in charge of Iran, 2006, after I wrote Atomic Iran. Let's listen to what President Trump said this morning as he was departing for the NATO meeting in Europe.
Very strong, but in all fairness, Israel unloaded a lot, and now I hear Israel just went out because that's not what we want. I'll tell you, and I'm telling you, I'm not happy about that, Israel, either. All I do is play both sides. I'm going now, as you know, to NATO. Some of you are going with me, and I think it's going to be successful. We'll see. I'll let you know.
Okay, we can stop it there, Chris. That's good enough. That's good enough. I think you see Trump is irritated at both. He wants the shooting stopped, and that's probably the only way this war is going to come to any reasonable conclusion. Both sides have to stop shooting. What we're going to do with the mullahs and how we're going to change this government without having a government regime change that the United States is trying to engineer, that's going to be the next challenge for President Trump. But I think he'll successfully get through it because he understands that what we did going back to, 50 years in the Middle East has not worked. And the idea that we can have U.S. forces occupy these countries to try to stabilize them is not happening. As long as you've got the Iranian radicals, as long as Islam is a radical religion and interbred with communism, we're not going to have any peaceful resolution to anything. And so therefore, the left is in control right now of the Middle East with Iran. John Kerry Well, I've opposed and I co-authored Unfit for Command in 2004 when Kerry was running for president. That was a Swiftboat book, if you remember. And the whole issue today is that the left has been repudiated by policies that have failed in almost every area you can think of. Economically, they've failed. They've weakened the United States by shipping our jobs overseas. They weakened the United States by these prolonged wars that accomplish nothing in the Middle East. And President Trump, I think, is finally getting a hold of the Middle East. What I see is that the action by Israel in Gaza is extremely important because it's going to eliminate Hamas. Palestinians cannot be allowed to come back into Gaza or Hamas will return. Now, Lebanon, even the Hezbollah is not firing or supporting Iran. Again, Iran is really out of money. Their oil industry has been cut down by bombing of the oil infrastructure. Iran is in desperate situation right now, and these mullahs are hanging by a thread. They have to stay in the bunker or their own people might decapitate them. And that's, I think, where Trump wants it. I think that's the appropriate way to go. It has to be a change from within in Iran. And if the mullahs resolve that they're just going to come back into power and rebuild their military nuclear program, well, we've accomplished nothing. And Trump understands that. Also, the Houthi rebels. Now, Iran's talking about cutting off the oil coming through the Straits of Hormuz in the Red Sea. It's where about 20% of the world's oil passes every day in oil tankers. And if Iran does that, it's suicidal because, again, Iran's hurting itself economically. So the whole issue right now in the Middle East is, I think, at a decisive point where if we can finally eliminate the Iranian threat, that's the terror master. That's the group that has been funding all these other terrorist activities. And even China and Russia are standing down. So I think President Trump has actually accomplished something major here. He is now going to have to deal with the Straits of Hormuz, the very narrow passage there in the Red Sea coming out into the Gulf of Oman. You can see it there on the map Chris is showing you, right by the UAE and Oman. By Saudi Arabia, that's the Persian Gulf into the Gulf of Oman. So that's right there, that Straits of Hormuz is where they would block the shipping if they could effectively do so. What the Houthi rebels were also aiming to do, disrupt shipping in the Persian Gulf. Okay, so there are still challenges, but I think the movement in general is forward towards peace. Trump's ultimate goal, I believe, in the Middle East is to reestablish the Abraham Accords, which would mean the nations of the Muslim nations would have to agree to stop this evil determination to destroy Israel. If that's the case, then in fact, I think we could have a positive movement forward where we could affect change in a massive way. Okay, so what I'm thinking is that prosperity through peace is the only solution. All these accords that have been signed, there's the Abraham Accords when it was signed, those were going into effect. And had Trump continued with his second term in 2020, I believe this war would never have happened. But the Democrats wanting to destroy America got back into power, and Biden and Kerry and all the rest of the Democrats egged Iran on to where Iran thought they could, with Hamas, support that October 7th attack, which started this current war. You have to see this current war as all of this together. Now, the solution here is going to be what Donald Trump announced as his end game. He will not lose sight of this vision that is making the Middle East the Riviera of the Mediterranean, all the way from Libya through the Gaza Strip. Palestine never really existed as a country. It's a myth. The Palestinians were a combination of Egyptian, Syrian, just various people. Yasser Arafat was an Egyptian. He was Muslim Brotherhood. He wasn't Palestinian. Palestine was the name of the territory when the British held it under the British occupancy, and the Palestinian people were everybody who lived in that territory, including the Jews. Okay, so the Palestinian is a myth. Trump knows it, and all of these myths are aimed at the destruction of Israel. The only peace that can come in the Middle East without nuclear war is if the Muslim countries decide they're going to live with Israel. If they do, Israel can make that desert flourish. Israel has the technology, the economic ingenuity, the intelligence, the ability, and with government guarantees from the United States, private capital can go in and start building in the Middle East to make it a recreation spot, a great attraction, to build it so that there are jobs, communities built for the Palestinians, including in Libya. Libya is willing to take the Palestinians. This is going to happen. It's a bit unfolding, but you're going to see Libya play a major role in this end game. And I believe Donald Trump is going to win because Donald Trump is on, I believe, God's side in this and is taking the right steps and the right moves. Okay, Chris, why don't you come on and comment on this? Let's have a discussion about it, because I think this is one of the most important world historic stories that we could possibly cover, and it's unfolding right now. We're living in history, as it were.
This is history being made. What I found rather interesting was when Donald Trump made this announcement yesterday, there were news media, the news channels like CNN and the rest were emphasizing the idea that Iran said, no, we're denying this whole thing. Later on, it was confirmed by Iranian officials that the ceasefire did happen. I was actually watching a clip on CNN. What's her name? Caitlin Collins, who looked rather disappointed when her guest mentioned this. So it looks like it's funny watching the reactions to what's going on. It was almost like they were feasting on the divide between the MAGA types and the Trump supporters over this attack. But now we see that the attack may have resolved a lot of the tension, or at least the major situation in the Middle East here.
Well, we're having massive changes go on overall, and I think we're on the edge of world historic change. And this, I think, is going to be a momentous time. And it only is happening because of Donald Trump. And I think Donald Trump is, when he survived the assassination attempts, I think he feels the hand of God is on him. Chris, what do you think?
Oh, I agree there too. In fact, I mean, this is a guy who has actually done things that he said he was going to do. He's all right. Maybe he hasn't fulfilled everything yet, but he actually has the wherewithal, the fortitude, if you will, to stand behind what he said before. He's trying to take care of things in the Middle East. He's going to reestablish the Abraham Accords, by the way. That's what's going on. But you're also finding that more people are speaking out now. Kind of out of the woodwork, you even heard the crown prince, if you will, or the son of the deposed king of Iran, if you will. I guess that's for lack of a better term. He was at a press conference in Paris yesterday saying this could be his Berlin Wall moment if people rise up against the mullah regime right now.
Well, I think we're just in midstream of these events unfolding. And I think a lot's going on behind the scenes. But I think Donald Trump is clearly in charge. And I think Donald Trump is the one figure worldwide, given the military strength of the United States, that everybody's going to listen to. So I'm very pleased to see all this develop.
True. And watch when he goes to NATO. He is pushing for NATO nations to up their ante to 5% of their GDP as far as dues, when pretty much they weren't paying anything much, if at all, beforehand. He might make NATO stronger.
Well, I think he knows that NATO countries won't do it. And I think he's in the process of destroying NATO. I don't think we need NATO anymore. I think we need to pull back NATO from the boundaries of Russia. There's no reason Finland's in NATO. There's no reason Ukraine should be in NATO. And you'll notice also that while this has been going on, there's been no noise coming out of Ukraine. Putin is waiting. He's ready to advance, and he's ready to take over much more of Ukraine if Zelensky and NATO continue to be belligerent, want World War III. But I think Trump is going to deliver the same message of peace to NATO and say, we'll be happy to cut off your funds as well.
That's fair enough too. The idea is it can go either way. Like I said, either makes NATO stronger and kind of puts them more in line with our future for the world rather than the globalist future for the world, or it breaks up NATO and does the same exact thing.
Well,
that's what his visit could do. It could go either way, either extreme, and those will work out for the U.S. either way. My thoughts.
Well, the point is, Donald Trump is really in charge here, and he's doing great things. And I think we're really moving forward here in a way that's very positive. So let's kind of conclude this and cover a few more stories before we wrap up today. I want to cover a couple more things. I'm finding that the world economic situation is still teetering, and it is going to be very difficult in the fall. I'm encouraging you still to talk to Swiss America. The price of gold right now is $3,316, and silver's at $36 an ounce. Okay, there may be some relief in the stock market today because it looks like we're getting a resolution of this war without it expanding, and so therefore, it could very well lead to a relaxing of the pressures to selling. So when Trump announced a ceasefire, the futures in the stock market went up, which is positive for a very positive opening. But the long term, I'm still saying that the dollar is extremely weak, and the economics don't look good altogether. Okay, so what you're finding is that the mortgages that are in default or near default are at increasingly record highs across the United States. And there are 3 U.S. states now that have Louisiana, Kentucky, and Mississippi top the list of states with the largest share of seriously underwater mortgages. That's properties with loan balances exceeding their market value by 25%. I mean, you can't sell those houses and pay off your mortgage. Okay, so these are extremely difficult times. And we're finding is that underwater mortgages could easily cause a collapse in housing markets in general. If we have deflation in the housing market with this bubble that had risen through the Biden years with all the spending of money we didn't have, I think we're in a situation right now where we are going to see more difficult financial times coming. The dollar is yet weak, and the dollar is not strong. And with 37 trillion rapidly advancing to 38 trillion in national debt, the next crisis Trump's going to have to deal with is the financial crisis, the irresponsibility of the Democrats just to spend, 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 spend. Okay, one more story I want to cover. Supreme Court last night lifted a lower court's order that required the Trump administration to give people 10 days notice and a chance to object before deporting them to a third country. Okay, so what we're seeing is that the order that came down from the Supreme Court was this decision was the thousands who are basically suffering violence at the hands of these illegals. The president has the right to solve the problem by deporting the criminal illegals. Okay, and it can be sped up by removing aliens to third countries that have agreed to accept them, even if that's not the country of their origin. The left is probably going to go insane over this ruling because it violates all their ideas of flooding the country and changing our demographic mix so that we have a communist revolution by people power. Okay, that's the original Marxist idea that demographics are power, and if the population is mixed and not assimilating as in Europe with the Muslims, that's going to be another problem long term. As the issue of Iran gets settled, hopefully, I wrote my first book in 2006, Atomic Iran. Of course, we can show the cover. And I've been at this for 20 years. We're finally, I think, now getting a situation where we're getting some sanity in the Middle East. I hope we get some sanity in our immigration policies and in our economic policies. Okay, so I think this is a historic moment, and I want to take advantage of this to say to all of our listeners, thank you for all the years you've been with us. That we're going to be evolving the show into, hopefully, we've got some offers here for some new channels. We're going to look at some new things, but I view this as an historic moment even for myself. that a great part of my career has been devoted to trying to deal with the problem of atomic Iran. When I wrote that book, 2006, it did well, but it was right after Unfit for Command had been a #1 bestseller. And this book, people weren't prepared in 2006 to regard Iran as a problem. But today, I think people see it. And I think today we got a different world. So with the help of God, we're going to have tremendous progress here. Please talk to Swiss America. And last, Chris, show the book and I'll give the 800 number. I want people to still be very conscious of the need to get some gold and silver. But you can get this free book, which is how the coming global crash will create an historic gold rush. You get it by calling a toll-free number 1-800-519-6268. 1-800-519-6268. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi with CorsiNation.com. In the end, God always wins, and God certainly appears to be winning today. I thank all of us who, myself included, have repeatedly follow the advice of 2 Chronicles 7:14. We'll get on our knees and ask God to forgive us for getting this country and the world in such evil, killing as many babies as we've killed in abortions, taking God out of the country and out of the school and out of our lives. We are getting back, I think, to the fundamental principles that Jesus Christ is the King. And this is a time to rejoice. The forces of evil, I believe, are on retreat, or at least starting to be on retreat. God will win. God always does. This is Jerome Corsi. Thank you for joining us. CorsiNation.com. We'll be back tomorrow. We're doing podcasts every weekday. God bless.